So why is it that Americans are different? In what ways are they different? And what I want to show to you is the importance of identifying what makes America America. And if you don't have in your own country the same situation, well, it's unlikely that that specific type of management will help you to emulate that type of economic performance that has made America so famous. You don't need to throw the whole thing overboard, the baby with the water. But it's important that you realize that some specific types of incentives are more suitable for Americans than for other people. And why is it that I say this? Well, let me then begin to share with you what I have to say. In first place, the myths of the Americans are different. Different from a large segment of the world. For example, Americans read the Bible themselves. They don't have a priest reading it to Americans. No. They are the heirs of Protestantism, of the Reformation in Europe. And it was some degree, considerable degree of religious intolerance in England that drove a group of people to take refuge in Holland. And from there, Leiden, the city of the university, there they migrated to the US. And by pictures like this one, which have to be commissioned and paid for, you have an idea of how they wanted to be seen and how important this scene is for them. If you look at it, our eyesight is drawn immediately to that white book there. I will try to increase that image. Now, the most lit up part of that picture is the book, the Bible. Around it, you have a group of elderly people, formally dressed, praying or supplicating. Now, those are the elders. But younger men or women are in the periphery of that area. There are no children to be seen. And if you stop to think, where is it that they are praying and supplicating? Under a tent. The meaning is you don't really need a temple. We just have to do it together. And if you look at the composition of that picture, on the top right-hand side of the picture, you have a vague, very vague reminiscence of the city that they came from. Tall buildings, castles. In the center at the bottom, you have the idea that these people are disarmed. The weapons are on the floor. The elements of war are on the floor. They're not being used. And in the top left of that scenery, you have a message of hope. There has been a storm, but the rainbow is already showing. So you see, these are the symbols that are used to convey an image of how they wanted to be seen. Now, was it very important for them? Yes, it was. About 20% of American presidents, up to Obama, could be seen to have a direct descendancy from those people that migrated from Holland. Now, 20% is a lot, considering that you have about 400 years since then, almost 500, right? So it's important that they wanted to be seen in that way, and that they continue to have, that message continues to have a very strong impact. Now, what is it that was in the Bible that they were reading? It's not the New Testament, but the Old Testament, right? And in the Old Testament, you have lots of stories. And one of them is the story of the Ten Commandments and the Exodus. And they have made films out of this, beautiful films that you can see, you should see. Now, the idea of the Exodus is that you have a narrative. Moses is the protagonist of that book. And you have a narrative that rewards perseverance in the audacity. Moses led the Jews out of slavery in Egypt. He even parted the waters with God's help. And he led them to a land of milk and honey, which presumably is where the Americans were when they arrived. Now, this idea that you must persevere along a route that will take you to a better world infused Americans, particularly in the first half of the 19th century, to an idea that there was a manifest destiny in their expansion. So if you look at this picture here, you have some kind of goddess in the center, but she has already crossed the Mississippi River, and all of them in that picture are heading west. That is the conquest of the West. Now you have there railways, you have people on wagons, you have people toiling the land. Essentially, it's an expansion towards the West. In the idea of a former president of the US, John Quincy Adams, they wanted to have the whole territory there, the whole land, under one language, one religion, one set of beliefs, etc. Of course, they will have to trample over the natives by then, but the idea is that there was a manifest destiny in which this is something that they had to do. To some extent, that is still alive today. Think of Afghanistan and instilling democracy in Afghanistan, for example, right? So this is something which was very present in the upswing of America. Now, not far after that manifest destiny, they had a civil war. Huh? Now, that was a very tough moment in America. Lots of dead, yes, terrible, right? But in the process, they started to institutionalize an attitude of folding in all the people that lived in that land, not least of them the people of African ancestry. It took time, it was difficult, right? But by 1956, a sequence of US Supreme Court sentences started a desegregation for good. For example, the buses in Montgomery, Alabama were to be desegregated. In the Clinton city of Clinton's birthplace, you have the desegregation of schools and the 12 Clinton students being able to enter into the school with white people. Now, all this was picked up by Martin Luther King and considered that 1956, again, there was a parting of the waters. So you see the reference to the Exodus. This is why the myths are so important. They percolate, they remain over time, and people use them to communicate. And it's not by chance, I think, that Obama was received as, the heir of Moses, freeing Americans from slavery. Now, it's not only myths, and there are other myths in America, Paul Revere myth and others. Now, let us focus on their stories. Not all of them, they're full of grand writers. The Grapes of Wrath, right? Or The Great Gatsby. Or, listen, you name it. They're full of good writers. What I'm putting here together is stories that are relevant to argue that management in America is reflected on a mindset of the people that have grown up together. Now, one of them is Rip Van Winkle. Now, this is one of the early stories of the 19th century. It has strong Germanic influences still. But what does it tell us? That this man went to take off a siesta under a tree. But when he woke up, America had changed. It was no longer a kingdom. Now they had a president. And there were many other changes that it's a lovely story. You might read it by Irving. Now, what Italo Calvino, the great Italian writer and critic, sustains is that this story prepares Americans for the change, the fast change in that society. And incidentally, something like it was used by Obama during his first presidency. Now, those stories that we consider today to be iconic stories of the US, those writers had a difficult time in writing because, the copyright laws of America would protect them as writers. Anybody that published their writings had to pay them copyright, but they didn't have to pay copyright to foreign writers, which means that foreign writers published their books in the US at a lower cost. Not that they wanted to be published in the US with no revenue, but that is how it worked. And at that time, during much of the 19th century, books by American authors were costed almost twice as much as one by a foreign author. So it was hard to compete for eyeballs, to speak. So Americans had to invent their own literary genre because they couldn't compete head-on with foreign writers. So they started telling these stories to themselves, and they usually had a man that left the environment into the wilderness, which could be the mountain range, the forest, the seas, right? And then he came back, renewed. And perhaps this is the source that Joseph Campbell started the myth of the hero. But the truth is that in those stories, the protagonists have a goal and a path to follow that they must follow with perseverance. That is the message of those stories. You see, this is what makes them so interesting for management. Take, for example, a lovely story for adolescents and even adult readers of Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. I mean, she gets taken out of her home, thrown out into a different world, and she has to make the way back home following a yellow brick road. Again, a goal, home, and a path. And there are messages in that book. Like, for example, if you need to show your strength to find a resolution to go ahead, you only have to look into yourself. That is, the power to be who you want to be is within you, not outside of you. Now, in this, she was repeating what we had learned from Ralph Waldo Emerson in Self-Reliance. You know, Americans were dispersed in the middle of nowhere. They had to make do with what they had and rely on themselves because there was not much more. Government was very far away. So in this story of Dorothy, you have a path, you have a goal, and you also have the sense of perseverance and self-reliance. And this comes again, this story for children in the 1930s. This is a locomotive that was entrusted to carry a load of toys up a very steep mountain. Other larger and older locomotives had rejected because it was too much. But this one thought that she could. So she started strenuously puffing on the way up of that mountain, persevering, one path, the railway, one go to take those toys to the other side of the mountain. As this locomotive was puffing up the mountain, she kept repeating to herself, I think I can, I think I can. And this is what picks up in business with that ad with Serena Williams by the Chase Manhattan Bank and by Barack Obama in his first presidency. You see, those voices, yes you can, yes we can, would not be as effective had not Americans read that little book when they were children in kindergarten. And not only those stories have a goal and a path, they're extremely focused. Dorothy wants to go back home, and that locomotive wants to deliver the toys. And that idea that you have a focus is very present in Moby Dick. Now, Captain Ahab is going to lead the Pequod and perhaps risking the lives of his third crew to kill that big white whale no matter what. And he has this idea, this fixation fixed on his mind as if it were a railway track. Again, a goal and a path. 100 years later, Hemingway comes up with a similar idea. He wants to fish the largest fish. He hasn't fished anything out of the sea for a couple of months, but he perseveres and he has to go out in a straight line into the ocean, deep into the ocean, where that is where the big fish are. And you have Coppola picking up on Conrad, a Polish writer writing in England, not American, but Coppola makes it American. He picks up the story, resets it in Vietnam, and has this Captain Willard having to chase after Colonel Kurtz, who has gone rogue, seeking to neutralize it. So there is a goal, Colonel Kurtz, but there is also a path, navigating in the river. It's only that way that they can do it. Hey, thank you, Maria Macarena. Thank you for being here with us. It's lovely to have you. I'm sorry, I have to I have to show these friends who have been kind enough to join me. I'm alone here clicking on things, so I don't see everybody. But you see, the focus and the perseverance along a path reappears in cartoons as well. You have this fantastic cartoon of the roadrunner. They can only run on roads. It's rule of the script. But there is a focus catching the roadrunner, and there is a path, the road, and there is perseverance, relentless perseverance. Now, this capacity of moving around to follow a thing it shapes public policy. For example, the Americans suffered in Pearl Harbor. And Pearl Harbor was an attack by the Japanese, concocted, led by Admiral Yamamoto. That is that guy in the picture. When the Americans discovered that he was going to fly to a specific place, they set out in their Air Force to bring him down. Now, that was 2 years before the war was over. By bombing him out of the air, the Americans would have revealed that they knew of the Japanese communications. That would have been a great cost, but worth having in a focus, in a mind that is focused on revenge. They had to take this guy out. Now, what we have here is over a century of focused, relentless perseverance that not only sought a chase of Yamamoto, but also of Bin Laden. Now, it is not to defend Bin Laden or Yamamoto. This is not the purpose. The purpose is to illustrate how those stories take the Americans to be very focused, to follow a path with determination and perseverance. Now, it's not only a question of following a path, right? Because the pragmatism is there, right? And the idea of pragmatism is that if it works, it's true. Forget about the nonsense of proving it, right? It's useful. So, for example, you have this painting hanging on the walls of the White House in Washington. It's George Washington crossing the river Delaware to attack and it actually facilitated the triumph of the American Revolution. But the fact that that flag, which is pictured there, only came up a couple of years later is not considered to be important, because what is interesting is what that portrait symbolizes. A daring move by George Washington. The flag is there, it's nice, it's useful, etc. And, don't try to stick on niceties. The fact is that that picture hanging on the wall of the White House symbolizes something that they want to be seen for. And it's not only that, one of the founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, was a great pragmatist, and he came up with hundreds of aphorisms like this one. This is one of the most famous, but it's not the only one. He's got others like, you have to mind the small leaks because they can sink a large ship. So you see, this idea that you have to get to a goal, following a path that is procedures, with thriftiness. That is the essence of what I want to point out to you. Because not only you have to follow the goal and a longer path, but you actually have to be very efficient. And it's not by chance, I think, that Americans have chosen the verb to run in order to explain how to run a factory. Right? I mean, other verbs could have been used in English, but that came in handy. And this is why I believe that, managers, they are running so much all the time that they should be called runnagers, not managers. Okay, fine, I'm only teasing you. But the fact is that American society seems that everybody is running away to save their lives. Because they have to be, they can't waste any time. Now, it's not only that they have goals and paths to be followed with efficiency. They do it in such a way that it seems obsessive. And Joshua Kendall picked up this in a book in which too many of American great iconic figures in business and in other fields seem to be a bit borderline. Perhaps some of them could be considered, a bit off-putting, but it works in business. Huh? So summing up, what message is it that I want to leave you with? Listen, the American stories have goals and paths, and I've shown you quite a few of them. Moby Dick, The Wizard of Oz, they're all there, right? And these are not simple stories, and it's stories in films, it's stories in cartoons. I think that they are quite telling of what we want to show. Huh? And if you stop to think about management, the purpose of management is actually to choose a path and allocate resources to attain organizational efficiency almost obsessively. You see, now, if you should read those stories attentively and watch those films and analyze the pictures that they have considered that it makes up for them. But what you have to understand is that watching all this will not make you American. They will not help you to lead the people who have not read the same stories or who have a different mindset because of it. So you see, this is what I wanted to show you. It's Americans are different, and they developed a management that was useful to them, and it fits the American mindset. People have been nurtured in that way of thinking. It's not how the rest of the world has been nurtured. And this is something that you have to keep in mind. And I have shown you, even if you read and love the cartoon of the Coyote and the Roadrunner, quite frankly, it was designed by Chuck Jones in order for the audience to side with the coyote, not the Roadrunner. But most Latin Americans and most people in Iberia, Spain and Portugal, side with the Roadrunner. And some families that I have spoken to here in Portugal, where I now live, have told me I would have never imagined that anybody could actually side and root for the coyote. Well, you see, this is how different we are. And if you want to lead people who have a different mindset, you better tune in. This is the essence of my message. Americans are great. They have delivered an enormous, astonishing and beautiful idea, both in politics and arts. After all, we all wear jeans and chew gum. Now, this gives you an idea of how important that development has been. But it doesn't mean that we have turned into Americans. And if you want to make the best of the people that you want to lead in business, you have to tune in and develop your own ideas for effective management. So this is the essence of what I wanted to tell you. I have a second part of it on Thursday, starting at the same time, that you're welcome to join in. So please do if you wish, because it should be fun. And, the interesting thing is that there is also a paper that I wrote with Inês Medeiros, a Portuguese national, and it's published in Thunderbird International Business Review, and that is the link to it. It's called A Pig in a Poke Management, because actually we have purchased something that is like a pig in a poke. Now, come back to me on Thursday, and I will be happy to meet with you again. I love it. Thank you very much for having joined me today. And yes, Bill, you're perfectly right. The managers are a reflection of the society they come and work in. The trouble, Bill, is that in multinationals, those people who have been brought up in that mindset actually are the ones that appoint the leaders of subsidiaries. And that is when they make a mistake, because they appoint people that look and behave like themselves, not like the people that they have to lead at the subsidiaries. And this, it cuts the necessary identification between the followers and the leader. It's something to think about. But listen, I have now run into half hour which is more than I intended, but just roughly the time that you can actually hang around here with me. So if you have any questions, I would love to answer them. Otherwise, I'll see you on Thursday again. Thursday, May 6th, at the same time. Stay tuned.